The Philippines. Wow. I wish I'd never heard of it. It started out nothing more than an innocent vacation, all the way back in 2003. My memory doesn't serve me well enough to remember the exact details of that vacation, but I can remember having the best time of my life. I arrived in the Philippines with my best friend, a guy who married a Filipina and brought her back to the US. They were going to sort out the construction of a house that they were building for their eventual retirement, and they asked me to tag along, as I'd just come out of a divorce that did more than ruin me financially. Having such good friends who helped me through that time and invited me to visit the Philippines with them was something I am eternally thankful for. If I'd have known what would have happened thanks to that vacation, I guess I wouldn't have bothered going in the first place. If I'd have known. That seems to be a very common thing that guys say. I've heard it in many stories, but I suppose that's the most important phrase. If we'd have known beforehand what we know, life would have gone in a better direction, but we didn't know that, and there's no point harping on about it. The Philippines in 2003 was a world away to the Philippines today. I still visit when I can, but I'm not in a position to be able to make it my permanent home, although I did try my best starting in 2013 to make living in the Philippines my reality. I lasted for 6 years and moved back home during the middle of 2019. The first 3 years of my life in the Philippines was everything I dreamed it would be. Unfortunately, deceit, betrayal, and poor decisions led me to have to return home. And this story is how I lost everything in the Philippines, when it was my intention to stay there forever. That first trip in 2003 opened my eyes to the world. I hadn't left the US before. Already 40 years old, the furthest I'd been was 3 states away, so the Philippines was a long way away. Not exactly a well-travelled guy then. It's not that I wasn't interested, I just didn't have any knowledge about the outside world. And I guess if I hadn't divorced, I would still be in that same boat. My best friend was the exact opposite of me, always travelling, always finding new countries to explore, with deep-seated hopes of moving permanently to the Philippines because that's where he met his wife. It comes as no surprise that he is successfully living in the Philippines with the same wife that he had all the way back in 2003. That goes to show that it is possible to have a successful relationship in the Philippines. But he told me, when I met his wife in the late 90s, that the game was very different to what it is today. He even said it's a very different situation that I found myself in when I moved to the Philippines in 2013. I didn't think it was going to be that different, but when he met his wife, the world was still a big place. That made things change and made it more difficult for me. With everything that happened, I still do hold special memories of that 2003 vacation. The pictures that I've saved from that time I still hold on to. And I'd loved it. It seemed to be close to perfect. I left in 2003 knowing that I would return. I have more memories of the vacation I took in 2010, a full 7 years after my first time there. A week in Manila, a week in Cebu, and the best week of my life in Angeles City. If I'm being held to account, I believe that the Philippines was more exciting and better in 2010 than it was when I left in 2019. It was still great in 2019, but in 2010 it still felt like it was something else. When I say that the best week of my life was in Angeles City, it was because I met someone. She wasn't just another Filipina. She was a receptionist at the hotel I was staying at, which led me to believe that she must be different to all the girls that worked in the bars on Red Street. I'm not saying I didn't enjoy Red Street. I loved it. But this girl that I met and went on a few dates with became my new obsession. I was 47, and the thing I learned from my best friend's marriage to a Filipina was that the chance of success rises considerably when there is not more than 15 years age difference. This was perfect for me because Rose was 39. She didn't look 39, but she was. Nothing happened apart from going on those 3 dates with her. I didn't think she was that type of girl. But when I left Angeles, first back to Manila for a day before flying home, the only thing that I cared about was remaining in touch with her whenever I could. It was hard at that time. I didn't have any apps that made video calling possible. I was still pretty old school, and one of the big expenses I had on a monthly basis was the phone bill that I racked up from calling her all the time. When I told my best friend that I had met someone in the Philippines, initially he told me to be very careful. When I mentioned it to him that he had a wife from the Philippines and his relationship was successful, he told me he had been lucky. He told me of many stories of other people he'd met who were not so lucky. He said if he knew what he knows now, he doubts he would have got married to begin with. That didn't fill me with much confidence, but I chose to ignore his advice because Rose, I believed, wasn't interested in money or anything like that. She was interested in me. There were times when she called me on the phone. That must have cost her money, and she wouldn't have been doing that unless she was serious. That was the reasoning I used to continue with the relationship. One thing that this relationship did mean was that I would need to go to the Philippines again soon. I would need to go and see Rose to make sure that what we had was actually what I thought it was. If I think long and hard, perhaps it was because I was not having any luck at home finding someone. And ever since my wife left, and as is typical, took most of my stuff, I felt a sense of emptiness that I had never felt before. 6 months later, I was flying back to the Philippines. I was lucky that my job was understanding, and they gave me a month off with no pay, but guaranteed my job would be there when I got back. They even said if I needed longer, they would be okay with that. That was my 3rd time in the Philippines, and I felt like an old hand at this point. Rose was delighted that I was back. I called her from my hotel in Manila and said I would see her the following day. She seemed to be so happy I was there. I couldn't believe it. I would be seeing her again. I really thought that would be the beginning of the best chapter of my life, and in some ways it was, if only it lasted. I got the bus up to Angeles the following day. It's only a 2-hour ride, but those 2 hours seemed to go slower than all the hours I spent sitting on the plane from home, because I knew when I got there I would be seeing Rose. When you get dropped off in Angeles, at least the bus I use, it wasn't really close to Red Street, and I always got on the tricycles at the bus station to take me where I wanted to go. I've never seen anything like those tricycles, apart from in the Philippines. But seeing them makes you feel like you are where you should be. And 20 minutes later, I was checking into the hotel. It was a different hotel to the one Rose worked at, and it was her day off, and she came to meet me an hour later. It felt so real seeing her again after 6 months, after the countless hours we'd spent chatting on the phone, and I thought the feelings were mutual. We went out that evening, and things became more serious. I stayed in the Philippines for 6 weeks. I extended my stay by 2, and during that time, my relationship with Rose became serious, and I knew that I couldn't picture my life moving forwards without her. The problem was deciding what to do next. I wanted to be in the Philippines, and that was the first choice. Taking Rose back to the States would be a huge hassle, so I quickly decided that would not be the best thing to do. I needed to be able to move to the Philippines. I didn't want to move there if I didn't need to, but because Rose couldn't go home with me, that was what I thought I needed to do. I wasn't in a brilliant financial situation. Thanks to my divorce, I'd lost my house, and I had not much to show for all my years of work, approximately $200,000. While that felt like an awful lot of money in the Philippines, I knew it wasn't enough to contemplate moving there. But as time went by during those 6 weeks, common sense and reason seemed to be 2 things that I tried to completely ignore. Saying goodbye to Rose was awful. not knowing when I was going to return, but with that feeling that it's more likely to be sooner rather than later that I could come back, because the separation would be unbearable. Back to work, back to the endless expensive phone calls to Rose, and 4 more vacations in the Philippines over the next 2.5 years. I was just about ready to take the plunge and move to the Philippines full time. During those 2.5 years, and on those trips, I spent over a month in the country on each occasion. On the second of those trips, I got married to Rose. She continued to work in the hotel and didn't ask me to send any money to her. No emergencies ever came up, and nothing made me think she wasn't the person I thought she was. I haven't told you much about her yet, other than her name being Rose, and her being 39 years old. She told me she'd always wanted to start a family, but she'd never had kids. She had kind of resigned herself to the fact that she would never have kids, and that was fine with me. I hadn't had kids as well, and I think maybe that's why my ex-wife left me, because we never have kids and she always wanted them. It's not like we didn't try, but some things just don't happen, and I tend to think there's a reason for that. Rose said she was from Leyte. Funnily enough, that was where my best friend's wife was from, and when they had built a house, they had planned to retire there. Funnily enough, he retired with his wife only a year after I moved there, and as I stated previously, he's still living there now, successfully, living the dream with his wife. With everything I found out about Rose, I believed she was my dream, and that's why I decided to move to the Philippines to be with her, to enjoy my life in the place I wanted to be, and to do something different in my life, because we don't get second chances. By this point, I had managed to save some extra money, approximately $250,000, which at home felt like a drop in the ocean. But when I arrived in the Philippines to start this new adventure, I felt like I was rich. Rose was paid around $200 a month. This meant it would take her 100 years of working and never spending anything to have close to what I had. So I did try to reason with myself that this was more than enough to be able to live in the Philippines. I was never a guy that invested or thought about making his money work for him. There was not as much financial information available then as there is today, but if I could have my chance again, I would have put all the money into an investment that could have given me a return that should have provided a basic income in the Philippines. But I didn't do that, and I can't go back and change what I did. But if I'd have known what I know now, that's definitely what I would have done. Rose and I spoke for hours about what we were going to do when I arrived. The first thing is she would leave her job. The second would involve us going to Leyte to visit her family. Although we were married, I had not yet met them, and I couldn't wait to be included as part of the family. From that, we would make a decision about where we wanted to plant roots. As much as I loved Angeles, I knew that it wouldn't be the best place to live as a married couple. If you're single and plan to remain single, then have at it. You couldn't find a better place in the Philippines. But I wanted to move somewhere that would be more appropriate for me and my wife. After I met Rose in Angeles, I'd literally just arrived in the morning and got the bus straight there, and it took me a few days to get over the flight. But we left Angeles for Manila initially, before going to Leyte to visit her family. Her mother and father were already quite old, and she had a sister and brother who were slightly younger than her, still living in the family house. It definitely was not much to write home about. Very rudimentary would be the polite way to describe the living conditions that they had. But they were amazing people. I know I've heard this many times before, but Leyte, let me rephrase that, certain parts of Leyte were stunning. I'd never seen anywhere with such breathtaking scenery, such a clear ocean, and I even asked Rose why did she leave in the first place. I know the reason was because she could earn more money somewhere else, but surely she should be able to make some money or even a modest income in her own hometown. It was when we were there that I decided I could see myself living there. I got in touch with my best friend, whose house was on Leyte. Unfortunately, it was right on the other side, but he did say I could go and have a look and see what it was like. His wife's family would let us in for a look. and I could see what kind of house you could build in the Philippines. I can't believe I was thinking about building our own house, but that's what I intended to do. We spent a week with her family. We didn't stay in their house, but there was a hotel close by. It was the worst hotel I've ever stayed at, but I didn't let a small thing like that bother me, and after the week, we went to see my friend's house. It wasn't quite overlooking the beach, but it was very close by, just as perfect a location as where my wife came from. They had a great plot of land, I'd guess just under an acre, and although the house was small, it had everything that they needed. A great western kitchen, 3 bedrooms, and a nice living room. The house was fully air-conditioned throughout, and outside they had enough room to be able to make additions in the future if they desired. My friend told me he spent $50,000 on the land and the house, but that was quite a long time ago. It was estimated that for a similar thing now, it was going to be closer to $80,000. Even still, that didn't sound like a lot of money. It was less than half of my savings, and that would also mean we didn't have any money to pay on rent. I was still thinking about my position. I knew I could last a while, but there were some things that I needed to sort out. There would be some time in the future when I would need to make some more money. That was when the idea of having a guest house with a few rooms became more than only an idea, turning into an actual possibility. The idea was, if we had a guest house somewhere like this, because there were lots of other foreigners hoping to settle there, they could stay at our place to get a feel for what it was like. The hotel I had stayed at, close to my wife's town, was awful, so providing good accommodation, at least to me, sounded like it could be a good idea. Build a house, build 4 or 5 small bungalow-style rooms that we could rent out, and the rest should be history. That was the basic plan, and something we spent a lot of time thinking about. We went back to Manila to get a change of scenery and to contemplate what our next plans were. At this point, I'm the happiest I've been. Rose is my dream wife, and she seems to be doing everything in her power to make my stay in the Philippines comfortable. Moving to a different country, especially one so different to where you're from, is a big thing. It's not like moving to a different state. It really is a big change of pace, a change of scenery, and getting used to different customs and cultures in a place so different to where you're from. We didn't really do much in Manila. We just stayed in Makati in an apartment that we rented for a month. It was a decent 1-bedroom, within walking distance to lots of great restaurants, but living in such a small, confined space was something I had never done before. I was used to living in a house with a yard and having a cart. I didn't think I could get used to living in an apartment for very long. I think that probably made the decision to build the house in Leyte easier to make. Although I could have lived in Manila if we had a big enough place was way too expensive though, and getting a house in Manila close to an area I'd want to be in, that wasn't going to happen on my budget. I did, though, prefer the laid-back lifestyle, so with that, we left Manila and went back to Leyte with the idea to build a house close to her hometown, and from that, we could think about what to do next. I always thought I've got years before something needs to happen, so I didn't put too much emphasis on what to do. It was just that we knew we needed to do something at some point. The first thing that we needed to do was find a place to live. The idea was to rent somewhere for 6 months to a year, or however long it took that we could find the perfect plot of land and build our own house to our own specifications. Finding a place to rent that was comfortable to live in wasn't the easiest feat, but luckily there was another American guy who was back in the States with his Filipina wife, and their house was currently empty. It was an hour away from where we wanted to build, but my best friend introduced me to them, and they let us rent their house for an affordable price. That was a godsend to be able to have access to that house, because it made us stay comfortable. Most of the other rentals we'd seen, at least ones close by, were nothing like something I'd want to live in. That made me believe that the idea of having a few rooms available for rent, that was something close to Western standards, would be a good idea. I bet many people came there and there wasn't anywhere good to rent, So I suppose that was one of the reasons I kept going back to this idea that I had. One thing that we did do was buy a car. Without that, it would be very difficult to go back and forth, so I considered that to be a very important investment. We didn't get anything amazing, just a second-hand Toyota, and that really improved my life there. I wouldn't recommend trying to live somewhere like that without your own transport. It's not like Manila, it's not like Angeles, it really is somewhere different, so your own transport is essential. When we moved into the rental, our lives became quite repetitive. During the first month, we're waking up early, driving to her town, and looking for the ideal plot to build our house. One of the tricks I found early on was to never present myself when looking to buy land. As soon as the people or the owners see a foreigner, they tend to put the price up considerably. So Rose was the one who went to look at it and speak to the owner. When a price was discussed, only then would I appear on the scene. We did this for 3 weeks until we found what we considered to be the best plot for a great price. It was a 2-minute walk away from the beach, and I know as a foreigner I wasn't able to own it, but Rose was my wife and she could. We put in an offer for the land 20% under the asking price, and it was accepted almost immediately, and not long after, Rose was the proud owner of the land. I can remember my friend telling me to be careful when I built the house. Be careful investing any money there. But I couldn't help but thinking, he's done the same thing, and he seems to be okay, so why wouldn't I be? That felt like a huge hurdle being crossed when we got the land. It was big enough to build our house, and also 4 or 5 small bungalow-style rooms that we could rent out. At this point, there were a few other foreigners living around the place, and I only thought that this would increase over time. None of them had anywhere to stay that was suitable, so again, I'm going back to this idea of the guest house. We started construction not long after. We didn't want to spend a lot of money on the house, just to make it comfortable and similar to that of my friend. We were hoping it was going to take approximately 6 months to complete, but it actually took 9 when it was all done, and we were able to move in not long after. All in, I spent $95,000 on the land and house, a further $7,000 on the car, but I still had more than half of my money left. That filled me with confidence that it was only a matter of time until we started to make a small income. I quickly got into a routine. I'd wake up early and go for a walk on the beach. But this wasn't a tourist beach. But it should have been. Crystal clear waters, beautiful sand, no trash inside, and just a perfect beach. And to walk on that every morning by yourself is an experience that for many beach lovers would be an experience of a lifetime. After I was done walking on the beach, I would have breakfast that Rose had prepared for me. Then I would just not have much to do. I'd read, go on my bicycle around the local town, and in the evenings, maybe we'd go out for a drink at a local establishment. There were no bars or anything like that, but we didn't need them because we had each other. I lived that life for 2 wonderful years before I started to think seriously about the guest house idea that I'd thought would bring in a small income. But not only that, I thought it would help future expats to have somewhere to stay when they were either visiting their girlfriends or wives, or even in the process of building their own place. It was at the end of 2015 when we started seriously considering this, and after looking into everything, it seemed that for around $40,000 we would be able to build 4 small bungalow-style rooms, the interiors of which would be to Western standards. I think I need to say that at this point I had no inclination that Rose was hiding something from me and had been ever since we met. She never acted like there was a secret being kept. She never did anything to try to get money out of me. I suppose I was willfully handing money over when it came to building the house and considering to build these bungalow rooms. So that meant she didn't even need to ask. But before we built the house, she never really asked. I paid for everything, and she seemed to be content. It was another year until we finally started to build these rooms. I wasn't spending much money, but the money was going down. I got myself down to $400 a month, plus the electric bill, so I didn't think that was a lot. We built the rooms over the course of the next year, We wanted to spend as little money as possible, so that's why it took a long time. But at the end of 2017, they were already built. I don't know if it was a coincidence or if it was planned on her part, but only a week after the completion of these rooms, Rose hit me with something that changed the way I felt about her. Rose had a daughter who was already 22, and she was coming back to Leyte after leaving her boyfriend in Manila. Their relationship broke down, so she was on the way back. I guess that's why Rose brought her up, because she was going to be visiting and living with us. I felt the biggest sense of betrayal I had ever felt. My ex-wife divorcing me and taking my things paled in comparison to this reality that Rose had just sprung on me. She told me she didn't have kids, and the fact that she did and didn't tell me made me not think about her in the same way as I used to. Although her daughter was already 22, and there was no indication that she was going to ask me for money for her daughter, the fact that she lied to me about such a thing made me feel like I didn't know her anymore. I wanted to overlook this, but that was no way to start a relationship. If she told me, would I have done what I did? That is difficult to decide, but I guess I probably wouldn't. When I told my best friend about this shocking revelation, he told me such a thing is common. Girls know guys prefer girls without kids, so if they think they're going to get something out of it, they're going to lie. The problem was, when I met Rose, she wasn't a girl, she was 39 years old. The dynamic, though, of our relationship changed. Rose was very apologetic, saying she was sorry she didn't tell me. She never thought things would go this far, and she never expected her daughter to want to move back to Leyte. Rose did expect that her daughter could move in with us. She even said that one of the bungalows that we built could be for her daughter, and of course her daughter couldn't be expected to pay any money to live there. I didn't know what to do. I'd already gone all in with Rose, and finding this out made me wonder what else she had been hiding from me since we met. If she was prepared to lie about that, all the confidence that I had about her as a person, her character, her sense of honesty, had been shattered. I no longer felt confidence in her, and that was very difficult for me to come to terms with. Her daughter arrived a week later. Nothing wrong with her as a person, but as far as I was concerned, she shouldn't exist. And as soon as she moved into one of the rooms I built, the way that my wife acted was different. Now it was all about her daughter, and because her daughter had come out of a relationship, she no longer had support that she was getting from her boyfriend, and she had no money. And that's when my wife started asking me to help her daughter. From that moment on, life was not the same. I thought long and hard about my decisions and how I was stuck there. I tried my best to continue with the dream that was living in the Philippines. I'm trying to make things work there, but every time I see Rose, I wonder what else she's hiding from me. Maybe her daughter was the only thing she hid from me. There was no way to tell. I never found out anything else, if she even kept any other secrets. But there was always that nagging feeling that at any moment she could say something that would change my life again. We now had her daughter living in one of the small bungalows. I keep referring to them as small bungalows, but really they were one room with a bathroom. The room was big enough for a bed and about a yard on each side, so it wasn't big. I want to make that clear. But she was living there, thinking nothing of turning the air conditioning on all the time. Each room had a TV on the wall, and that's what she did. She'd wake up, turn on the TV, and play on her phone in the comfort of an air-conditioned room. I hadn't built that for this, and I told Rose that what she had done had ruined everything that we had. Up until the point I found out she was hiding a daughter from me, I thought my life was perfect. I thought Rose was perfect. I thought I'd found a girl that was everything that any guy would look for, but I didn't feel that way anymore. No matter how many times Rose tried to reassure me that she wasn't hiding anything else, I just couldn't believe her, and I didn't want her daughter to be supported by me. That wasn't the plan, and because of everything that happened, I didn't do anything to promote the bungalows I had built. I had plans to list them on a number of websites. I had plans to take bookings from people, but I just didn't do it because I was too depressed and upset with the situation that Rose had thrust upon me. I was not enjoying my life anymore, and Rose tried to fix things, and I wanted to be able to get over it, but I couldn't. A part of me just wasn't prepared to accept that she had lied to me about something as big as that. And although she kept trying to reassure me, she really tried to reassure me that she wasn't hiding anything else, I just couldn't get over it. And I knew that if I couldn't get over it, there was no point me being there, and I might as well accept defeat and go back home. I didn't last much longer, and it was around the middle of 2019 that I told Rose I was leaving. I wasn't happy anymore, and no matter what she did, I wasn't prepared to accept the lie she told me. Part of me wishes that I didn't leave, because I honestly think that what we had was good. I think we could have had people in the bungalows. Maybe they wouldn't have been full all the time, but it should have given us a bit of money, which would have made a huge difference. I wonder if Rose is utilising them to the best of their potential at the moment, but I highly doubt that, and I bet each of them are being lived in by members of her family. I lost everything I had, but thanks to extremely hard work and being lucky to find a job before the onset of the pandemic, I was able to continue with my life. I am $50,000 shy of the amount I took to the Philippines with me. 6 years of extremely hard work, and this is where I found myself. I haven't spoken to Rose since I left, and on paper we're still married. I'm older than I was, unfortunately no wiser, and if I could have my time again, I would have just stayed there and tried to make things work and tried to overlook that Rose had lied to me. Although I managed to make money back at home, I'm not happy here. I don't like it here, and I don't want to be here. My best friend is out living with his life and enjoying everything. I think back to everything he told me and how I should have been careful and not do anything I would regret. He admitted to me that he was lucky, and if he knew what he knew, he wouldn't have done what he did. But because he was lucky, things worked out. Maybe Rose having a daughter didn't mean I was unlucky. I just couldn't overlook that, and that's the position I find myself in today. I've been back to the Philippines for a vacation a few times, but it's not the same anymore. It's interesting to listen to other people's stories. I personally know 4 people who have been through similar things to me in the Philippines, and they all seem to know people who have had other things happen to them. Many people have fallen spectacularly trying to make the Philippines their home, and I am one of them. But the next time I move somewhere, and I am planning to move somewhere soon, I don't think it will be the Philippines, and I won't get married. That's the only 2 things I am certain about.